My name, as Jennifer said, is Niamh O'Connor. I'm a councillor here in Cork City. I'm actually the only Social Democrat on Cork City Council for the moment. Our next panel, as Jennifer said, is a chat with our by-election candidates, which I'm really excited about. The government is clearly running scared from these by-elections, but the Social Democrats are all in. We have chosen some absolutely fantastic candidates. I'm really excited to have a chat with them. We have Míde Fhionnlaoich and Councillor Daniel Ennis. So just sit down and start our chat. So guys, is this microphone working? Oh yeah, okay. So guys, I guess we're going to start with an easy one, but it's not all going to be easy, okay? So we're going to start with how and I guess why did you get involved in politics?
Do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, so the area I'm representing, the North Inner City at the moment, and Dublin Central further on, is a reflection that everything I am as a person. You know, I've played on every blade of grass, I've played on every piece of concrete, every pitch. Look, I've worked there through youth services, sports clubs, and I was born and raised there. You know, when I'm raising my own family there, I'm the fourth generation, I think, in the house that I'm in, and 2 young kids, Wilder and Rain, 2 and 8, and my partner Chloe. Look, before I entered politics, I was the first person in my family to go to college, and most definitely the first person to enter politics. And before I joined the Social Democrats, I didn't know what social democracy was. And I soon realised it's just about being decent and wanting what's best for people. You know, and that's what I've brought to my politics. And look, I've seen the neglect by the Fine Gaels and the Fianna Fáils firsthand in my community. I've seen what that's led to, the entrenched poverty. My mum and dad grew up in entrenched poverty, and I've seen what it done to my family in terms of crime, addiction, and just really ravaged our communities. So I witnessed that, and I've seen who the cause was of it, you know, and we were always to blame, but never got a chance to speak for ourselves. So I want to be that positive voice in our community. But I've seen where that led to, with the anger and the fear and how that was manipulated. And look, it's manipulated by the establishment parties, there's no doubt about that. But I've seen the space around the anti-immigration protests and the hateful actors what sprung about and the far right and how they manipulated that fear and that anger. And I just couldn't stand for that. You know, I seen the Says No protests outside the iPass centre in my area, and I walked straight by them, straight in the door of the iPass centres, and just met some of the best people in the world. And when you meet people, like, you can't hate up close. And when you meet people, you realise they're the same as me and you, the same hopes and dreams for our kids and for our future. And that's really carrying that then, like, my work spans right across, mainly sport. You'll see a bit of a theme across what I'm speaking about, football and football mad, but like, football and sport is an amazing tool for bringing people together. You know, and we use that at East Wall Besbury, the club that I'm involved in, as a tool for interaction, understanding and integration further on. And again, integration, I didn't know what that word meant until we started doing it. And we were long doing it with East Wall Besbury. You know, our club was set up for people that were struggling in addiction. And the traditional sports clubs weren't letting them back in because of the heroin epidemic in the 80s and 90s. And look, that ravaged our communities as well. But that's what our club was founded on, you know, not saying no to people that just wanted a second chance. So when I seen the Says No movement in my area, I just couldn't accept that. You know, our club and our values and our principles are built around opening the door for anybody, no matter what their background or where they come from. And look, that sprung about. Like, we now have, like, I suppose we indirectly fought the Says No and the hate and the division in our community. And now, like, I entered politics to directly fight it. And just to be that, I suppose the last final push from me entering politics was just to be that positive representation of the North Inner City and now further on Dublin Central. Be that strong, positive voice to fight against the politics of hate, division and distortion that the far right were driving like a wrecking ball through our area, but we're now seeing the language and the rhetoric change from senior government ministers. And I just simply won't stand for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. You can't hate up close. Míde, do you want to let us know how you got involved?
Yeah, of course. I think it reflects Dan's experience of, even though we come from very different parts of the country, I think what ties through it is that politics is about humanity. It's about people. It's about their lives and how to make them better. Like for me, I grew up during austerity, and I saw the impact that it had on the people who were least to blame for the crash. And it wasn't just that it was hard times, it was also the rhetoric of almost that if you were struggling, it's your fault. If you can't stay here, if you have to immigrate, that's nothing to do with us. And like for decades in Connemara, where I'm from, like it has been that consistent theme of like our biggest exports are young people to America, to Abu Dhabi, to Australia. And there's a real hopelessness in the community of ever being able to make a life here, ever being able to pull that community together. And for me, as an Irish speaker and as someone from the Gaeltacht, that was always something that really struck me, is that, you know, you can have all the Irish language policies in the world. If you don't have that community, if you don't have people being able to live normal lives, play with their football club, go to work, go to school, you don't have anything. There's no one left to speak it. And particularly like seeing those problems around inequality in Galway when it comes to transport, when it comes to housing, when it comes to health, that knock-on effect on everyone's lives of you have every day the stress of, am I going to be at work on time? Are the kids going to get to school on time? Am I going to have to sit here for 2 hours praying and hoping and stressing? Am I going to have to worry about how to pay the mortgage? Am I going to have to worry about getting evicted? And like that, I've seen how that builds up on people. And I've also seen how there are solutions out there, and there is a sense of hope. There are people pushing back, there are people fighting back. Like we have a great group set up in the Gaeltacht about housing in the Gaeltacht called Bonu. And they, I think, are a great example of how communities can come together and push back and fight back and stand up and have hope that things can change and can get better. We just need the will.
Absolutely, absolutely. Common theme there, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael ruined my area, and that's why I'm in politics. You're talking about housing. I gave you an easy question to start with, but we're going to talk about housing now. When I was thinking about the two constituencies, they're vastly different. I mean, Galway West covers a lot of rural Ireland, but also Galway City, and Dublin Central is probably one of the most, if not the most, urban constituencies we have. But would we all say that housing is the biggest issue that we're facing in the country?
Absolutely. Like there's no aspect of your life it doesn't impact. There's no aspect of work, of school, of anything else. All the pressures that are in all those areas are feeling a knock-on impact from the housing crisis. If it's you can't get enough nurses to work in the University Hospital in Galway, if you can't get speech and language therapists, which is a massive issue currently in Connemara, we're seeing speech and language therapy move 17 kilometres away from the people who are accessing it, because we're seeing all these knock-on impacts from the housing crisis. We're seeing Gaeltachtaí struggle to survive and struggle to keep the language in their community because people can't find housing, they can't have families, they can't live where they're from, and they can't continue to build that community into the future. And then, like in the city, you're seeing like what I would have described as Dublin prices for 2-bedroom flats in Galway. You have this massive issue of lack of availability, but what's really, really pushing people out is lack of affordability, and genuinely affordable, not €500,000 for an affordable house. And that's what's really tearing our communities apart. It's what's tearing our city and our county apart, of how can you build a society, how can you run public services, how can you build a good life for yourself and the people around you if you can't even find a roof to have over your head.
Absolutely, yeah. And I assume the issues are similar, if not worse.
Absolutely. Like, as Míde just said there, like the Social Democrats, we have solutions. This is not by mistake. This is by design. It's by decision, political decisions. We look at Dublin Central, you know, most eclectic mix of people all in the one area. So you look at, how can you look beyond Dublin 1, first of all? We've the highest concentration of emergency accommodation to be found anywhere in the country. We have 10% of all the emergency accommodation on the one street, on Gardiner Street. Like, how can you look beyond that? That's crazy. It's crazy, and what the social issues come with that, all people with complex needs in the one area. And I hate talking about people like their problems and numbers, but like this in the years to come, if it's not already, it's going to be a national scandal. Like, it really is. And you can throw a stone as far as the IFSC. Multinational banks, you walk down the IFSC down, like you're walking by €1 billion, you know, and as you see, again, back to the point, it's by design, empty apartment blocks. Yeah. You know, a stone's throw away from people, like bunk beds stacked 4 high in emergency accommodation. But again, the solutions, there really is. You've like, I have friends and family, and you're hearing constituents right across the constituency, their 30, 40, 50-year-old son and daughter living in the box room. You know, it's crazy to me, and to look beyond that as a crisis, it's a disaster. It really, really is, and like, it's going to be forever a stain on this government. The last 10 years, their lack of urgency on it, and to treat it as the emergency it is.
How are we going to fix it?
Yeah. Well, look, we have solutions, like the State Construction Company. Like, we've some of them are already hearing that there's no one stronger on housing, you know,
Absolutely.
across Europe, if you ask me anything, you know, and that's what, being a part of a party like the Social Democrats, we've some of the most passionate, the most kindest, decent and visionary people that I've met anywhere across the world.
And it is that focus on people when it comes to housing policy, of it's people who are affected. Yeah. It's not markets, it's not anything else. It is at the core of any piece of housing policy is this making it easier for someone to have a roof over their head and a decent quality of life? Do they have security of tenure? Are they sure that their rent is not going to be racked up to market rate, whatever that means? And it is about making sure that people and their lives and what's important to them is at the absolute core of our solutions, because that's not what we're seeing from government.
And Niamh, sorry, just to come in on the end of Major's point there, again, it's putting people before developers. Yeah. You know, like, that's what it's about, ultimately, you know. Like, it's putting people before your friends' pockets. You know, that's what it's about, really. And again, back to the point, it's not by mistake, it's by design, it's by decision.
Yeah, it's not a flaw, it's a feature.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to move from housing. I'm not letting you off lightly, lads, because we're going to go straight to health. Number 2 biggest problem, I think, in this country, or like, look, I suppose it depends on your perspective, but I think broadly those are the 2 biggest problems that we hear on the doors. Míde, you have worked in mental health reform. You bring a lot of policy experience as a parliamentary assistant. You've a wealth of experience in the area. How are you going to translate that to helping the people of Galway West if you're elected?
Yeah, so I suppose when it comes to particularly my background in mental health, the big thing you learn again is that the lived experience of people in the system is so difficult and so flawed. And it's not to say that the people working in the system, of anyone you come across in the HSE, nurses, hospital porters, doctors, they're doing their best in a system that is broken and is flawed. And again, like Roisin Shorthall championed Cllr, we are the party of Cllr, of setting out a one-tier healthcare system where people are able to access what they need in their communities when they need it. Like, we have a huge problem in Galway in the hospitals in Galway. We have massive, massive backlogs. We have some of the longest waiters in the country on a myriad of issues, be it occupational therapy, be it physio, be it speech and language therapy. 1 in 3 people who are waiting more than 18 months for an inpatient procedure in a hospital in this country are waiting on Galway's hospital lists. Wow. We do not have 1/3 of the population. But again, it is that systemic issue that then racks up to a backlog on hospital care of you do not have enough GPs for your communities. You do not have small injury units. You do not have that real integrated healthcare that catches people before they're getting really sick. And again, it is that daily worry and pressure of, oh, I go in for a checkup, okay, that'll set me back 70 quid. Oh, what if they find something? Will I have to pay for private health insurance? Will I have to go private or sit on a waiting list for 6 months when things might be a lot worse? It is that daily burden that people face. And like particularly, you see it so acutely in the mental health system. And again, you have it's just storing up problems from the future of so many people on waiting lists to see psychiatrists, so many people on waiting lists for CAMs, because you have nothing at a community level to help those who need it when they need it. And they just get worse and worse and worse. And it's really scary. And it is a problem that can and should be addressed. And for me, it's really frustrating to see it year on year and like to see budgets coming in year on year where we're not putting money into fixing the system. We're not putting money into slow and secure implementation. We're not putting money into sharing the vision. Like, we have the policies, we have the roadmap, we have the plan, but there seems to be no interest in making it happen, and that's unacceptable.
Absolutely. I think people say the government has implementation deficit disorder. That's one I got. That's one I got from Padraig Rice, TD. Credit where it's due. Daniel, I know we were discussing yesterday, and you were saying that like disability and carers' rights are huge issues when you're knocking on the doors, because I know you're out already knocking on the doors. So what are the supports that are needed in Dublin Central, and why aren't they being provided?
Well, straight away go to the Equality in Education campaign that we're a part of at Dublin Central right across the country. It's amazing. But that sprung about from, as well as the neurodiverse group in my community that I'm involved with, NIC Side by Side, because of lack of services for their children. You know, we meet as a committee, and look, I do very little on that group. The two, Michelle and Rachel, that run that are just superheroes. Like, the two kids are involved, and they just, again, sprung about from lack of services. And it was almost an awareness group, first of all. And what they've done in our community of North Inner City is just incredible in terms of awareness and laying on activities, parent support group. And they're going to have the area's largest sensory-only space very, very soon. And just literally started from the back of their car. But again, that sprung about from lack of services for their kids with additional needs. Skill places. When we meet as a committee, when I speak to the parents of that group, and knocking on doors right across Dublin Central with people that have children with additional needs or disability, it's waiting lists. You know, like one girl I was talking to, she's waiting 2 years for the speech therapy assessment. You know, and that's all you hear, like, can't get skill places. You know, speaking to someone who I used to go to school with last night here at the conference, Aaron, and he was telling me that he had to delay going to college because they missed out on a skill place for his child. You know, like, these are real stories, like, affecting people's futures. Not only the futures of the children, the question, but the parents. And that just comes up on every single door. And it just doesn't have to be this hard. It really doesn't. And again, where I live in the North Strand, we've over 100 people registered with disabilities in my dip of the North Strand. And again, you're speaking to them, and it's like they're taking bus stops away, you know, losing their independence. Like, just going around to the shop is a struggle. You know, shouldn't be this hard. It really shouldn't.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, like, you've both spoken about waiting lists there, and the solutions are there. That, like, proper implementation of Sláinte care would transform health in this country, and it's just not being done. So I think, Míde, what we haven't mentioned about you yet is you're a fluent Irish speaker.
You've mentioned Irish speaker?
Yes, sorry, native Irish speaker. And you've mentioned the Gaeltacht while you've been speaking. I know that you're running in Galway West because obviously President Catherine Connolly, who the party were very happy to endorse for president, she has obviously vacated her seat. So during her campaign, I feel like Irish language, Irish culture really came to the fore. Maybe it's been kind of happening for a while now, over a couple of years. We call it the Catherine Connolly effect. We could call it the kneecap effect, maybe, if we wanted to be controversial. How do you see that? Like, what does that bring to your campaign? I guess, do you feel like maybe you can understand the issues facing the Gaeltacht more because you're from there, you speak Irish natively?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's really heartening to see that people not only are interested in language, but that people have a newfound respect for the language as something that is part of Irish society. Because, like, growing up with the Gaeltacht, and I think many people from many Gaeltacht, all along the Western Seaboard particularly, will have felt for a very long time that we're communities that were kind of left behind. Of it's a nice place to go for holidays. It's a nice place to send your kids for a Gaeltacht course. But nothing was being reflected back on the reality of people live there. People live there all the time. They don't just speak Irish in their houses. They speak Irish going to the shop for a chicken fillet roll. They speak Irish on the football pitch, which is really handy for confusing opposite teams. But that, like, this is like a real community. And then, as well as that, you have a massive Irish-speaking community in Galway City and up and down the country who are really showing that it's an important part of our identity, an important part of our lives, an important part of our culture. And for me, it's a really beautiful part of it because it is, obviously, learning a language can be very hard, but it is accessible in that anyone can do it and anyone can belong in that community. And, like, particularly when it comes to Gaeltacht issues, I always view Irish language policy and Gaeltacht policy as very distinct. Okay. Because fundamentally, muints in the Gaeltacht can act as the guardians of the Gaeltacht and of the language, but they just need to be able to survive as communities. And that's what we've been really letting them down on for years and years. Of, like, the last census saw a dip in the number of daily Irish speakers in the Gaeltacht, and yet the minister of the day was like, this is great, there's more people who have fluency with Irish. If you don't have it in the Gaeltacht, it doesn't matter how many fluent speakers you have, because you don't have a community that is speaking Irish, that is living through Irish. And, like, it goes back to the 70s in Gluaiseach Carta Sibilt and the Gaeltacht civil rights movement. Most of their demands were around jobs, were around public services, were around the basic things that people need to survive. And then, obviously, there were things around Irish language radio. But again, this is all about serving on football. It's not about words on a page or books or anything that is just an Irish language thing. It's a people thing.
Absolutely. We're going to finish on hope because I think somebody said yesterday, I'm just quoting people who said good things, but somebody said yesterday that none of us would be here if we didn't have hope. That's why we're Social Democrats. So I want to ask you both to give me a brief bit about what gives you hope for the future. Daniel, we'll start with you.
Yeah, hope for me, so going back to sport, like you'll see me now every weekend, like my therapy is the kids and the football. And my fear when the protest force kicked off in my area, that it would have kind of spilled into the club, and it didn't. But I suppose even before we seen the protests, but there's a lovely story. Like we've a pitch down in the middle of East Wall. It's surrounded by houses, but there's a cage and there's a little track around it, and then there's a little shed area where, when it's raining, everyone scuttles underneath it, and it was lashing rain one morning, and that morning you had kind of a couple of the residents from the iPass Centre. You had kind of the new kind of middle class, so I'd say, that moved into our area, and then the traditional kind of people that have lived there for generations, all kind of dotted around the pitch. And when it started lashing rain, they all scuttled underneath the shelter. And then the next week, the sun was shining. They were still underneath the shelter, talking to each other. You know, and that gave me great hope. And then on the pitch, you have the kids killing each other over the, one side and the other side, and then hugging and kissing as they're coming off the pitch. And we teach our kids, and this be my proudest work, bar none. Like, we teach our kids there's only 3 colours on a football pitch: the red, which is your jersey; the blue, that's the opponent; and the green, grass. And when you step onto that pitch, as you step in and navigate your way through life, treat everyone with respect, because, like, hate is taught, and kids don't see hate. And that's my hope. That really is my hope. And that, with every branch meeting I go to, every council meeting with our DCC reps, with our TDs. Like, it's an amazing movement and party to be a part of, the Social Democrats. You know, as I said, some of the most decent. Some of the most decent, passionate and kindest people that just want to put people first, and how can you not want to be the spearhead of all of that? So look, I just have to thank everybody within the party and around this room for the support.
Fantastic. And Míde, where are you getting hope?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely getting hope sitting on the stage with someone like Dan. Like, and for me, again, it's just always funny to me of, you see, like, we have such different constituencies, such different areas of the country, but it's that same thing of people on the ground, of parents who are willing to stand up and come together and host public meetings and run campaigns around disability services for their children. It is people who are looking at the housing crisis in the Gaeltacht, and they are forming a campaign group like Bonu, and they are taking it straight to the decision makers in this country, and they're saying the way that they are treated is unacceptable. It is that, like, I think the real enemy for anything is apathy, is that kind of, and it's very easy to be apathetic. It's very easy to see all the massive problems we face and say nothing can ever change. But what gives me hope is that I think us as a party and the people I see on the ground, they know things can change, and they know as well that it isn't something that will just happen. It is something that is to do with them. And like, that's what democracy is about, that's what social democracy is about, of ordinary people, ordinary citizens, able to come together and push for progress, push for the issues that are important to them, services that are important to them, push for their communities, for their lives, and for their future. And like, particularly, I remember a couple of weeks ago talking to someone from home, and we were talking about how it was so difficult to imagine growing up, living our entire lives in the Gaeltacht, because it is true of, like, we are raised for export. And it is that massive expectation on your community that you won't be able to make a living here, and that we will lose so many people, and maybe they get the chance to come back, but a lot of them don't. And we were talking about why we are putting down roots in the Gaeltacht, why we are staying, and why we are getting people and coming back and fighting, and it's because that's where the fight is. It's on the ground, in your community. It's on the ground with like, lead the football. And that's where we're seeing progress, and we're seeing movement, and where we are pushing through. And that's what gives me hope for the future.
I say that all the time, like, the council work is hard. You see some of the worst situations you could possibly see. People come to you with some really horrific problems. You see the breadth of problems that exist in this country in a way that I'm not sure other people see, but what it's balanced by, and the best part of being a councillor is just seeing people work for their communities, come together for nothing but the betterment of each other, and to improve their local area, how they live, and it is like, it's hopeful and it's inspirational, and I think it's probably why we're all doing it, why we're all here trying to, make, I guess, social democracy happen, is it?
And it is that hope and inspiration, like, that's normal. Like, that's in everybody.
Absolutely. I think we're going to have to wrap up. I want to thank you both for your time today. I think it's been a really interesting conversation. I want to say best of luck with the campaigns. I know you don't need it, and we'll see you on the doors, and then we'll see you in the Dáil.